Hey everyone, welcome to our Swarm Footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. We are on our run of videos to do with the food prep and planning and meals and all that sort of thing that happen post our 6-week grocery haul, and I'm doing my voiceovers running in a row. So I am in exactly that same spot as the last one, showing you the doing the voiceover for the current video. So quick rundown, as I said, we're a family of 8, we live off grid, we shop every 6 weeks about 4 hours away in Brisbane, and I stay at my mother's for 2 nights to do that trip. We do Coles and Woolworths and Aldi and Costco, fruit and veg, butchers, and we buy in bulk, and then what we do is we preserve it, meal plan it, prep it, freezer meal it, all that sort of thing post getting home to make sure that it lasts us that 6 weeks, which is what everyone is always interested in, how we manage to make the food work for 6 weeks and what we do with it and things like that. So that's what we've started sharing. I am doing the videos every couple of days, like doing a couple of days worth of food prep and stuff per video lately, because that seems to work the best, but I am a little inconsistent with posting them. I was really sick at the beginning of the month, so while I was filming all this I was quite sick, so I've got bits and pieces of missing footage all over the place because I just wasn't feeling very well, and then I've collated it all together as much as possible to do these voiceovers for you guys. So this is part 4 of the August food prep. Generally speaking, there's somewhere between 6 and 10 parts to it. It really depends on what I buy that month, if there were some really good deals on fresh produce and things like that, or if I've made some sort of interesting meals that I haven't made before, or that sort of thing. At the moment I also just got the website up, and I am trying really hard to do videos of food that the recipes that people want me to put up, so that I can have some videos to go along with those recipes, but for the moment that's still part of what's getting done. So we're trying to do that in between. But if you're interested in continuing on, then keep on watching, and I will let you know what's going on as it goes on. So this is, as I said, I think it's part 4 of August, and come along and see what we got done. So we started off the day with Dutch baby pancakes. I have actually just managed to get this recipe up on the website, so I'll put a link in the comments if anyone's interested. Dutch baby pancakes are a favourite breakfast. We absolutely adore them, but they are also great for when we have a surplus of eggs, because each one of these trays requires 18 eggs to make. So we can get, in the middle of, summer when the chooks are really heavy laying, we can get 24 eggs a day. So being able to use this many eggs in one meal is really beneficial to make sure we get through them, but it's also a well-loved meal as well. So we started off the day with the Dutch baby pancakes for this morning, and we made 2 of them because we had heaps of eggs to use up. The next thing I worked on was one of our rolled pork roasts. So when I shop at Costco every 6 weeks, I buy a case of these rolled pork roasts. If I buy them by the case, they are $1 a kilo cheaper, so I end up with 3 of them per shopping trip, which is generally around about the 20 kilo mark of pork. We use these for a real variety of things. We use them for making sausages, grinding up to make sausages. I grind them up as mince to use as like breakfast sausage, or for on top of tacos and nachos and all sorts of things. Like, we use them all the time. I recently made some wontons with the pork mince to have as well. I sometimes make pork buns out of it. I sometimes will use the pork in pies. We just find them really versatile for such a good price. So if you buy them by the case, they're $6.99 a kilo. Buy them singly, they're $7.99 a kilo. So even at full price, they're a pretty good price for what they are. The first thing I tend to do with these is I take all the rind off the rolled roast so it can be used separately. It's a bit of an arduous task, and that's what we count, I sort of count that as part and parcel of getting something this cheap, is that you have to do the prep work with it as well. So I slice off the rind, leave some fat in both places, because I want some fat on the rind and some fat on the pork that's left behind. You need a good sharp knife, and just take it easy. My hands aren't real happy with me at the moment. I think the skinning of all the roosters that we processed, plus the cold weather and everything else, my hands and my wrists are a little just swollen and not working real well, and there's a fair bit of pain. So I just take it slowly, nice sharp knife, and just peel it all away as you're slicing underneath. It doesn't have to be neat or anything else. You just want to take that rind off. What we do with the rind, generally speaking, is that we slice it up into strips and we put it over potatoes in a roasting dish, and we roast the potatoes to have as a meal. It works best with potatoes with the skin on. So sometimes, like this month, we've got Dutch cream potatoes that we bought that are all brushed. They're very dirty, and so we're having to peel them because they're just too hard to clean, which is not, it doesn't work as well with the rind over it because of the heat that you have to have the pans at to render the fat and things like that. It just doesn't work as well. So you want to cook these on really high heat so that the fat is rendered out of the rind goes nice and crunchy, and the potatoes are cooked in that lard, and then the excess lard that's left we put in a jar to use for cooking. So potatoes in their skins work a lot better than potatoes that you've peeled. And Dutch cream potatoes are, I don't think they're really normally a roasting potato either. They're working really lovely. They're making really fluffy, beautiful mashed potato, but they don't seem to roast up particularly well. So we put the rind over the potatoes into the trays. We slice it all up. If I don't want to use the rind right then and there, like if I've got other meals planned or if I don't have potatoes on hand or whatever else, all I do is I put that rind into Ziploc bags in the freezer flat, and then I can pull it out at any point. So the next time we're making roast potatoes to have with a meal, I just pull the rind out, let it frost slightly, cut it into strips and put it over the potatoes and roast them like that. And then that way it's creating its own fat for that potatoes to roast in. And then we have all the meat left behind to do whatever we want with. So there's all sorts of things that we do with this pork. As I said, we mince it. I also will can it. So if I cut it into chunks, I put it into jars, raw pack it into jars, and just can it as is. It ends up being like a pulled pork in a jar, which is really lovely. I have been known to pull it in the pressure cooker as well, though it is a fairly low fat pork compared to like a Boston butt or whatever. It still works as a pork belly, but as a pulled pork, but you will have to add a fair bit of moisture to it. It doesn't create enough of its own. It ends up a bit dry, but that's fine. You just add we have the plum barbecue sauce or the apple butter barbecue and things like that, and they all work really well in it. So canning it, mincing it, chunking it up and that sort of thing, it all works really well. So once all the rind is off and over the potatoes, I use the spray bottle and I spray it all with a layer of oil and then sprinkle fine salt over the top of it. That's just going to help it crisp up even better, and salted rind is always nice. Like when you're eating rind as a snack, it's always nice to have it salted. So you just want to use fine salt so it sticks to the rind and does that bubbly thing that rind does in a nice high temperature oven, and cook that over the potatoes. When you pull them out, you do need to pull the potatoes out of the pan fairly quickly if you want to keep that lard that's left behind. Otherwise the potatoes will just suck up the excess lard and you won't be able to save it for anything else. So we tend to pull the potatoes out nice and quickly, and then we pour that lard into jars to use for cooking purposes later, because it's just rendered lard. It's dirty because it's gone in the pans with the potatoes and stuff, so it's not a nice white lard, and it has a flavour to it, but it's really good for frying things off and stuff like that, or cooking other potatoes in, or whatever you want to use it for in that way. So what I did with a large portion of it today was I made our pieces that we use in the smoker. So what I do is I cut chunks off, and I cut it into sort of evenly sized chunks, and I put the strings back onto it to hold it back together, because it was a rolled roast, so you want to hold it back together. So I just tighten those strings up so that it holds it into a nice sort of a firm sort of a roast. And then I coat the roast in some mustard, because that's going to be your binding agent to hold your dry rub on, but it's also going to help keep the roast moist. It's going to help hold the moisture in, because these roasts, these cuts of pork aren't overly fatty. They're not excessively lean either, but they don't always have a great deal of marbling, so you want to make sure that you're keeping them nice and moist. So I put a coating of mustard over the outside of it to hold that dry rub on, but also to help with the moisture being retained in the roast. And then we put the dry rub on. So I think I've got a recipe somewhere floating for a pork rub that I use. It's a sweet and smoky rub. It's got smoked paprika and sugar, like brown sugar in it, as well as onion and garlic and all that sort of thing. This particular time, I'm pretty sure I just used my bacon seasoning, because, as I said in the last video, I've run out of smoked paprika. I need to do my bulk spices order, and so until I do that, I was short on the individual ingredients to make the rub, so I've just been using the bacon seasoning, which is similar to the sweet and smoky pork rub that I use. Probably a bit higher ratio of sugar in it. It's got a bit of sumac and things like that in it, but a very similar sort of a flavour profile. I don't think the bacon seasoning has mustard powder in it, and normally I would have mustard powder in the pork rub, but anyway, it's close enough that it works. So you want to coat the pork well in that rub, it's going to turn into a bit of a crust when you smoke it. So it's nice to have it fairly dense on the pork, and then when you slice it off, it'll be that really nice crust on the edges of the pork. And of course, because it's only on the outside of the pork, you can't really overdo it because it's going to be only on the very outside edges of the pieces that you're eating, so it's not like it's going to be overwhelming or anything like that. So we put the mustard on it, then coat it with the dry rub and get it ready to go in the smoker. Now, we have a dual fuel smoker, so it's attached to an LPG bottle, but we also put wood pieces in there. I put a stainless steel rack in there to put my wood pieces on and things like that. So we turn the gas on to get it started, to get the wood started. You're going to run it at you're going to try and run it at about 150, 160 Celsius, or about the 300, 325 Fahrenheit. This pork roast is not one that I do too slow because we're going to eat it as a slicing pork, not as a pulled pork. So we do it as a decent temperature realistically, because we're just cooking it a bit like roasting it in the oven, but we're going to do it in the smoker. So I always add a couple of chunks of wood right at the beginning to get lots of smoke going initially, because they don't take on smoke for the whole cook. They only take on smoke for the first sort of 30 to 60 minutes, and then it stops taking on smoke anyway, so there's no need to do that. So I put it in there with a probe in the middle of the largest part of pork and the thickest part, so that I can keep track of the temperature. And I have a Bluetooth thermometer, like little digital thing that tells me the temperature. And because we're going to slicing pork, not a pulled pork, we only want to get it to about the 63 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. 63 would be around about twice that in 150 maybe Fahrenheit. I'd have to look that up. And so about 63 Celsius, and then we pull it out and we wrap it in foil to rest for 15 minutes, and then we slice it. So it's a rare roast rather than if you were going for a pulled, then you're taking it up to double that temperature, like you're taking it up a lot higher than that. So we only want to take it to 63. So it just goes into the smoker, onto the racks, and then I pull it out when it hits temperature. The next thing I got started on was brining some bacon. So I bought a rindless pork belly purposely to turn into bacon. We do buy economy bacon from the butcher. It runs from $5 to $8 a kilo, depending on whether they've got specials on it or not. And it's very passable, but it's not great. But I just don't like paying premium for premium bacon. It just ends up a little bit too expensive. So what we've been doing is buying pork belly and turning that into bacon every trip or every second trip around about. And then we tend to eat less of it because it's sort of, gourmet bacon rather than what we can go through from the cheap stuff. So it probably ends up a similar sort of a price. The bellies are $14.99 a kilo at Costco, and they're normally a 4 to 8 kilo piece depending on what size you buy, and so we just turn that all into bacon. To brine it, I do a very simple brine. I've used the pink curing salt. You don't have to use it if you don't want to, but you just have to be aware that it has to be treated a little bit differently if you don't use the pink curing salt. The pink curing salt allows you to have a longer fridge life post smoking, whereas if you haven't used that curing salt, then it's just cooked pork. You have to be aware of that, and you have to make sure that you slice and freeze it at a decent time and things like that. We have been using the pink curing salt lately because we had the fridge issues and things like that, and so it was easier to compensate for that, to allow that, knowing that it was going to be okay. So I have been using it lately. So brining, you want equal parts of salt and sugar for the pork. So you want around about a 1/4 cup each of flaked salt and sugar per kilo of meat. And then if you're using the pink curing salt, then you want 2 grams per kilo of the pink curing salt as well. And you want to mix that all together. Then you need to coat the pork with that. So I've been using these plastic containers. I have used Ziploc bags. I think the last lot I did, I used Ziploc bags, but the pieces of pork are a little bit too large to comfortably fit into the Ziploc bag. One of my viewers did say that you can apparently get 2-gallon Ziploc bags now. I forgot to go looking. So because we have the new hybrid fridge freezer, we've got more space in the fridge to use, so these plastic containers work really well. I have a whole bunch of these. I use them for all sorts of things, for my canning supplies and for fermenting supplies and all that sort of thing, to keep things clean in them, like on shelves that are open in our kitchen. Kmart used to sell them pretty cheap in like boxes of 5, except they don't sell them anymore, which is a bit sad. I need to find an alternative to buy, actually. So because I have the room in the fridge, this container works quite well. So all I do is I layer in the pork in there with the brining, like the salt and sugar and stuff, in between the pieces of pork, and then over the next 7 days it's going to sit in the fridge, and each day I'm going to pull it out and I'm going to rotate it, flip it and rotate it, so that it's all getting a chance to sit in any of the liquid that the brine creates, that the brine is drawing out. So all that salt is going to draw liquid out of the bacon and create a wet brine that the pork belly is going to sit in. So I just need to make sure to flip it and rotate it within that every day over the 7 days that it sits in the fridge. I pulled the pork roast out of the smoker at the 63 or thereabouts temperature, as I was talking about before. I have to apologise here for this blurry shot of it. I forgot to focus on the pork after I focused on the thermometer, but I do show it being sliced in the next day's footage, so you'll get a better look at it then. We pull it out at about the 63, and then we wrap it in foil and let it set for 15 minutes before we do anything with it, so that it can absorb that liquid back and the liquid can set in there and it can come down temperature a little bit. So wrap it in foil and let it rest for a while. The next day we had pizza for dinner. So I had made the pizza dough the night before, and then I proof it overnight. So I mix it all up, sourdough pizza dough the night before. I use the KitchenAid and get it all put together, put it in a container and bring it inside to proof overnight. It means that the next morning, and depending on what the temperature has been overnight as to how quickly the next morning, in summer I need to do this pretty much, bang on sunrise as soon as I get up. In winter it's sometimes not till 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning before it's really that much of an issue. I pour it all out and I shape it. So we make enough dough that we have 8 pizza bases out of each batch of dough, and they are about 250 grams each, which gives us 8 pizzas for everyone to have a pizza each of their own choice of toppings and things like that. And then the kids will put leftovers in the fridge to have the next day for lunch. So I shape all the pizza dough, I put it into trays with some semolina to stop it sticking to the trays and itself, shape it into balls and put it in the trays, cover those trays, and they go into the fridge until about half an hour before I'm ready to make the pizza for dinner that night. The day rest in the fridge makes the texture of the crust a whole lot better than doing it same day, so we definitely try to do it with a overnight proof and then a day in the fridge before we use it. If we don't want to use it that day, it can be used sort of up to about 72 hours. It can sit in the fridge waiting for you to use it, and you'll just get a little bit slightly more sour flavour to your dough the longer you leave it. This is what the pork looked like the next day. So it had been in the fridge all day, and we sliced it up cold to have with lunch. So we had it on some flatbreads, I think, with some coleslaw and stuff for lunch this day. So this is what the pork looked like after being roasted and then rested and then chilled in the fridge for the day. This is how we put our pizzas together of an evening. So as I said, the dough had been in the fridge all day, and then half an hour before dinner I'd pulled the trays out so that I could make the pizzas. We use this wooden board that has a handle on it as a pizza peel. It fits into the Baker Stone pizza oven that we use on the barbecue, which is a barbecue box pizza oven that has ceramic stones in there. There is a video with a review of it, though when I first used it I didn't like it too much, and I have gained more appreciation for it the longer I have used it and have figured out how it works. We have to put the hood down on the barbecue to get it up to a decent enough temperature to get that sort of lift in the dough that we want. It doesn't get hot enough unless you close that hood. So we did try it on the Camp Chef originally, but because it's an open flame, no hood, we just couldn't get it hot enough. So it definitely works better on the barbecue with the hood closed. We have a variety of toppings of the pizza. There's homemade pizza sauce that we've canned. We have pineapple that I've canned. There is some children and Darryl likes anchovies. Then there's the marinated mushrooms that Darryl has and some of the kids have. We have tin corn, which everyone thinks is weird, but I really like. And then we had some of the smoked pork roast sliced up on there. We generally have salami, sometimes some bacon, chicken if we've got chicken left over. I think we actually had some of the velveted chicken left over on this one as well this particular day. And whatever we happen to have in season. The zucchini butter is really nice as on the bottom with the pizza sauce if we've got it. Caramelized onion jam is really nice spread around with that pizza sauce on the bottom as well. So it really just depends. We use pizza very much as use whatever we've got sitting around that needs to be used. If I've got leftover pork mince, the breakfast sausage or anything like that, that works on a pizza as well. And this is what they look like when they come out of the baker stone. So this is the last pizza that I cook, which is mine, which has cheese on it because I cook mine last and I have cheese because I can. So this is how they come out of that pizza oven and what they look like sliced up. So that was part 4 of August's food prep, planning, preservation, all that sort of thing. I hope you enjoyed watching and I will see you on the next one. Thanks guys.